Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
This is your captain speaking, John Regan. I'm sitting in for Vincent today. I just don't know how somebody that is a farmer manages to make the show as often as he does when it's during daylight hours. I know some other farmers that do nighttime shows when it's dark out and you can't do things, but we get to excuse them now and then. Well, it's Thursday here, and that means it's time for Dr. Richard Allen Miller.
Good morning, John.
Good morning.
For piloting today. I'm very concerned about Vincent. This is the first time in how many years have I been doing radio with him now? I mean, I'm amazed. I mean, I hadn't even thought about it. It was just something I did every Thursday, and I miss him, and I miss actually being with him. His ideas, his way of seeing things is so. I was just writing a letter to J.C. Cole, and from something that Gerald Clark had said on an interview regarding some of my early work. And I miss all of you guys, and I wished we lived closer. I wished we lived closer, not because we were in a bunker, but because, this is a type of stimulation, a type of way of seeing things that's quite different than my own. And I miss that. I like that other side of the perspective. The way Vincent looks at things is very interesting. I'm going to miss him if he... we'll just wait and see what happens. I hope everything's going to be okay today.
I know I'm starting to feel my age a bit. And
I know that's sorry.
Given the shape of the world, I am really glad I'm not a young man today.
Oh, I wouldn't want to be a child going through school. This is crazy. I would not survive it. I know I wouldn't. I know that I would be. I'm very blessed to not have to deal with some of the things that children have to deal with now. Good Lord.
And the attacks are coming from so many directions.
What do you mean? What is when you say facts? I'm just looking at another article, and I'm not sure it was either J.C. Cole or Joey that sent that one to me. That was about how now science is losing credibility because of the GMO studies and the pharmaceutical industry and the related marketing thing. I remember a time in physics when it was accepted and allowed it that you would go off into blue sky not knowing where it was going to lead you in terms of your research. Blue sky means you've got wide open field, you can go anywhere you want to, and it's open and important to find out what is not there. And, like finding it's a dead end, to know that. But today, I watched it change from the 70s to the 80s, where in the 80s it was already assumed that if this study did not have application to something that's going on in marketing, it was not funded. And that was in the 80s. That was the change in the sciences. It was as if everybody felt we already have enough knowledge. Now what we're going to do is prosper. And the prosper was defined as the American dream, and it was somehow related to your incomes and status with the kind of car you drove and the way you lived in this kind of a house over that. And that all changed in the 80s. That's what I saw happen in the sciences, where they no longer were interested in new technology. It is not so way like in cell phones and the related, I don't know what you even call them anymore, these iPhones and smart computers and things of that nature. We had already gotten into qubit forms of technology, and so algorithms were going, and that was the AI. But that's about it. There wasn't breakthroughs like a solid-state physics. There weren't breakthroughs. I remember when all of solid-state physics first started with integrated circuits and monolithic circuits and or type of logic systems, binary. And then everything changed, and then nobody cared anymore because it was about marketing and the new advances of look what my phone does. It turns itself on and off all by itself and wakes me up and tells me what to do. You know, I don't get it. I don't know why people don't realize that we're asleep and that we all of us need to start waking up and taking a closer look at why we do what we do each day. Because for me, a lot of it's meaningless.
You know, I had an experience early on in my Air Force career that I didn't realize what it was telling me at the time. There's ACM, Association for Computing Machinery, and they had a conference in St. Louis. I was at Scott Air Force Base in Illinois, so that's about a half hour away. I went over, and one of the sessions I picked up on was talking about this new processor from Intel that they were working on called the 386 chip, and that they expected this to be used for front-end network processors. Now, that term is probably meaningless to 99% of the people out there, but the front-end processor is the cabinet on a mainframe that talks to the terminals. And they thought that it was going to standardize around this. Now, keep in mind, this was probably around, I think it was winter, like February, March 1980. The IBM PC didn't come out until later in 81. So it was still very, very early in the small computer experience for most of the public. And the 386 didn't get released in the small computer format until I believe it was like 87.
Yeah, that was like before, that was after Wang. And that, I remember, did you work with Wang computing?
They had Wang word processors at the Pentagon that I used.
Yeah, that's what we used. We had Wang back in the late 70s, early 70s. Actually, early 70s when I was at Boeing. We had Wang, yeah, early 70s.
Yeah, you think about that. They had that chip in the pipeline in 87. There's such a long planning curve. They knew about that, so translate that into all this other stuff that's being forced upon us. With the smartphones, the upgraded cellular communications, 5G is coming out, which is going to enable the Internet of Everything and the virtual and augmented reality.
I remember when I was at MIT in 1967, Corning was offering a very special I took a graduate course on NOR NAND logic using fluidic devices. Back in 67, solid-state physics was known to not be safe in outer space because it had a half-life of 8 years on their checksum error things from gamma rays. and it was not reliable in space. And so this is the old monolithic circuits. And so they offered a course which later became object-oriented, where Corning had developed computers that were smaller than the ones using integrated circuits that would work well in space because they worked with Schmidt triggers and were puffs of air in a binary system, a go, no-go, but it was based on NOR, NAND logic. Neither this nor that. And that system was a two-part system over the originals and, or, and not. It's not this and this, or it's this and that, and, or this nor that. And you could go and have logic systems that would be able to function with three. And just by doing two, nor and and, made the thing 20 times faster and 20 times smaller in information logic systems in the way you would write the code. That was a long, long time ago, and the whole thing was on marketing. And the reason we went into solid-state physics is because the computer would at some point become old, and you would have to replace it, unlike a DeLorean. It was a metaphor. And that's what I saw happening in the 60s, and then in the 70s, it was still open to the sciences, but by the time the 80s rolled around, there was a paradigm shift in why we did what we did and studied what we studied. And I'm so, you were in the Pentagon in the 80s, I was there in the 70s, and it was, that's impressive that you were there. I heard that when I did John B. Wells, he mentioned your name. Well, no,
for good, I hope.
Conference or something down in Texas?
Yes, in fact, it's right my back door here in Dallas. It's the Hear the Watchman conference.
Tell me more. I don't know. How come I wasn't invited? I'd love to spend some time with you again. That's the only way I get to meet anybody is by going to these conferences and things. That's how I meet Joey or Vincent or you. You know.
We'll talk about that when we get back from the break. This is John Regan at the controls today, and we were starting to talk about the Hear the Watchman conference before the break, and the link for that is on my website. If you go to the news tab at the financialstateoftheunion.com, pretty much all of the posts I have there have that as the top link. The website is hearthewatchmen.com. The conference starts way too soon for me, March 31st. I have so much more work to do, and goes through April 2nd. One of the big names there is going to be L.A. Marzulli. The topics haven't been announced yet, so I don't know what he's going to be talking about. Derek and Sharon Gilbert from Skywatch TV, John B. Wells, Pastor Paul Begley is going to be doing the Sunday service. We have Russ Dizdar. The spiritual warfare, it's really so far beyond what, if it's even talked about in your church. I know it's not talked about in mine. Michael Boldea, Dr. Michael Lake, Pastor Billy Crone. Pastor Crone had an excellent presentation last year's conference. I cover spy tech and things like that here on USA Prepares, and he put together a DVD set that, the artificial intelligence, the robots, the drones, and to see that all put together with all those videos was kind of jaw-dropping. Coach Dave Dobemeyer, Pastor Carl Gallups. If you listen to Hagman, you might have heard him about 3 months ago. He was part of Sheriff Arpaio's posse on the birth certificate, and he talked about that on the Hagman show. Josh Tolley, who has the show here on Genesis, exact same time as USA Prepares, but again, Genesis lets you have the podcast for free. So if you want to listen to both, it's not a problem. Josh Peck, part of the Skywatch TV group, as is Jake Rukowski. Pastor Mike Spalding is going to be there. Pastor Casper McLeod. I only knew him as a musician from Knoxville. I didn't realize his background is quite interesting, and he's got a lot of great information about the Shroud of Turin. And then Mike Norris, who was involved with the Armageddon movie, and Lisa Haven. So it's quite a group that's going to be there. And if you use my last name, Regan, R-A-G-A-N, that will get you $20 off the tickets. And they have now opened up the live streaming, which it's an outrageous, just only $39 for the entire conference. And I get to go back and watch for 30 days after the conference. And if you use the code Ragan5, R-A-G-A-N, and the numeral 5, you get 5% off the live stream cost as well. So that's what's coming up in less than a month.
I wished I had a chance to meet some of these people. I remember when I worked for Chuck Walters at Acres USA, and Chuck, I was a keynote speaker with some of the other things that were in agriculture, and I remember that my growth came from meeting other speakers rather than what I was talking about to the audience. That's where my personal growth came, was meeting the other speakers and finding new ideas and how to integrate my own worldviews. And that's what made me able to write such things as my encyclopedia in alternative agriculture. I got to meet Dan Scow. I got to meet these kinds of people that were doing things that I had no idea about, like animal husbandry. It was exciting. That's what it is for a speaker. You get to meet other speakers.
Yeah. This is John Regan with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. We'll be back in a few minutes. This is John Regan sitting in for Vincent today. Dr. Richard Allen Miller. We had just talked about the Watchman Conference, and just to put my probably my last word on that for today is what's so great about the venue for this conference is everybody's in the same room. The speakers are one at a time, so you don't have that difficult decision to make. Which one do you listen to, and then you have to wait and watch your live stream to get the recording or buy the DVD later, which you may want to do anyway, because so many of these presentations you have to watch more than once to get everything. But it's great, especially for the speakers, because that allows us to be in the room too, to listen to the other speakers. Like you were saying, you learn so much from the people that's done all this fantastic research.
Back in when I was writing in agriculture and first met Chuck Walters, I was pro Roundup. At that time, tilth had just begun in Washington. Tilth had not even started yet in Oregon. It was just brand new and certified organic. And we all felt that Roundup was safe because it broke down into all the inorganic salts within 10 days. That's why you didn't want it to have rain, because it actually stopped the root from being able to use photosynthesis, and it killed the plant, broadleaf. That all changed when we realized today that the research that was being reported in areas that were not our expertise. Like I was a physicist, so I'm not looking in agronomy and the peer review that would be present in scientists calling on each other's, questioning each other's research. And that's the type of thing I meant about the change in things was in the 80s, when that technology was no longer sacred. And the concept of a scientist trying to lie about his, I like that new liquid hydrogen metal that they're talking about now, where it's in a metal form that turns out to be bogus research, and a physicist actually lied about his research and things. It's an embarrassment in the sciences to realize that the peer review is no longer sacred in terms of calling each other and challenging each other on technical issues. And I've watched this deteriorate to a point today where you can't trust anything anymore. I mean, nothing being reported by anybody, me included, is suspect. I mean, it's you can't presume just because I'm a good old man that I'm telling you the truth. It's important that where I always started with myself in the sciences was that I tried to get as good a solid an understanding of the physics of something, and then I went inside myself when I didn't know and followed my instinct. That's what made me a good scientist. My instinct of knowing my material, the part I did know, and then trusting myself in trying to make the right decision in which way to go in studying something. That's one of the reasons when you came to a fork in the road, you always went internal to determine which way you wanted to go. Because if you did logic and the upper brain is going to sit there and it's like, it has to do with belief systems. It's there. Your upper brain is there to make your beliefs true. And so I've watched scientific bias when they want something to happen because they want it so bad that that's the way they see the data. And there's nobody to call them on it anymore, because I remember when Carnegie Mellon came out with 36 of 38 people reviewing the thing about chemtrails, and 36 of peer-reviewed scientists said it's contrails. Now, that's because Carnegie Mellon is not to be trusted as a source of peer review. Most are based on who's getting what grants. All funding is coming mostly from the federal government now in those areas of research, and you can't trust because the only people they'll fund are the ones that are complying with rules and regulations on what we're going to say and what we're going to do in our research laboratories. And that's what I meant about the blue sky difference between what's going on today and the way it used to be as I remembered it. And I, stepped away at that time when it changed and went into agriculture. And when I came back, as I am today, trying to work as an armchair physicist because I don't have my toys anymore to go into a laboratory and vet something literally. I have to work on my instinct. And I'm telling you, I'm embarrassed for most of the sciences that are happening today. It's an embarrassment. Anthropology, some of the things that they're doing now in anthropology are interesting, but I'm highly suspect. They've just unearthed down in Popo more in that Clovis culture that had a facility or a city that was bigger than New York City and would appear to have had, as of last week, they determined, space travel. Now, that's a previous epoch that turned into the Hopi. And they talk, that's 5,000 years ago. And when you go into mythology and you read about Hindu philosophy about the Brahmana and some of the other concepts of chariots that flew in the sky, you have to understand that we've been here before, and we're going to, unfortunately, have everything. The Clovis, that culture that had space travel, that culture crawled out of a cave. And if you go to France, they have in the Cavern of Dreams or the Cave of Dreams, that they found artifacts on the walls, the paintings that would, oh, look, that's a bison. That's drawn from a caveman. On closer inspection, you realize that the dots and what appear to be little dots or something around the eye are actually a star constellation, literally, precision. And then you go down to another cave in France, and it's in reverse because it was witnessed from space. Now, what does that suggest to you? And why in Antarctica today they are evacuating all citizens? That's on Godlike. Now, Godlike is a Christian posting place, Godlike Productions, and you have to go in there with your bullshit meter at some level to try to read through lines on what is and is not. And yet, something is happening in Antarctica today, and I have no clue what it is. I've listened to David Wilcock, others that would suggest that they have discovered down in below the mountain, that's 100 miles below the caves I was in Antarctica, where the Nazis were. 100 miles below that, they're finding some kind of ancient alien artifact like a city. And they're evacuating. That doesn't, the way the Godlike projection put it is, it isn't that it was ancient and abandoned, like Wilcox and others have suggested. Now it suggests there's something down there, and that's why they brought all the world leaders in there. And there was a stalemate or a rejection of what was said, and now we're at war with something. I have no idea what it all means. And I'm not there, so I can only speculate, and it gets creepier from there. Have you heard anything about that, John?
I've been following the closest I've heard to what you talked about at the beginning there is that they're getting all of the civilians out of there, and it's just military only.
Yeah, exactly. What does that suggest? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the part I don't know. And I am going to say that my instincts say that there's way, way more going on right now than has been disclosed to the public, and that I can only fathom what it possibly might imply. And I have seen technologies that the Nazis were after that were from previous epochs. And yet, we are today in forms of technology that deal with fire. Radiation, electromagnetic radiation, electric current grids, that kind of thing. This is the sixth epoch, if you play that biblical game, where we are at the so-called end of days on our sixth epoch, and that we have just encountered something, that I have no idea. Nibiru and that concept, the Hopi and their songs talk about the red and blue kachina. What comes to mind in that concept is redshift and something going through our solar system so quickly we see it in a redshift form of going from red to blue and the red to blue kachina. Now, I don't know that. All I can do is try to put the data together the best I can. And I can say this, that there is earth changes occurring now. I don't know what the weather's like in Texas, but here in Oregon, we had snow yesterday. We've never had snow past Christmas, New Year's. We get right in that region. If we're going to get snow in the valley here, that's when it will happen. And it happens every 10 years. We had snow yesterday in March. Now, I don't understand what's going on. I know that Antarctica itself is melting, and that the weather patterns, because of the ocean currents being stopped, have somehow centered in and around the central of Europe, and they're getting hammered.
Well, hold that thought. We'll be back after this break. This is John Regan at the controls today. You were asking about the weather here. February, we had 9 days of at least 80 degrees. And it was about 6 weeks ago, before we had our first freeze. We hadn't had fall here. The leaves were still on the trees. So after that first freeze, the trees lost their leaves, and now it's been so warm, they're already coming back. So it's not been a normal winter.
I don't know what to say about all of that. I think I think there's going to be a day after tomorrow. I can, from a physics point of view, there is no way it cannot happen in order for the saline part of the ocean has changed. That will absolutely cause a day after tomorrow. It's a point where the weather has to reboot and reset the ocean currents as they used to be, or set an ocean current pattern. The Gulf Stream is gone. All of it's gone. How does that happen? In my lifetime, I've seen it happen, and here we are. And so there will be, just like in the movie, a day after tomorrow. It won't last more than 10 or 14 days. Maybe you're going to need 10 feet if you remain in the northern hemisphere, just like in the movies. You're going to need at least 10 feet between you and the surface of the earth. And when you come up, pretty much all the seed is going to be dead in the soil, which means you have to go down into the earth with that. That's one of the reasons why that repository over in Sweden or wherever it is now stocking up, literally, at this moment, with seed. So I don't know why they don't inform the public and allow individuals to prepare for their maker in their own ways. I don't know why they don't do that. It's as for our own good and to prevent panic, so that the panic will only occur in the last moment. That's crazy. And actually, the correct way to approach all of this is that we have an opportunity to restructure the infrastructures that we currently enjoy. And so we have an opportunity here to change the way we're living. Survival is such that man will always, at some level, survive. There will be blood, and there will be panic and sorrow. But in fact, in some ways, I'm looking forward to a change, because even when you said I wouldn't want to be a child now, I'm not sure why I want to be here now with all this nonsense going on in disclosure. I have always searched. I was a seeker. That's why I seek spiritual enlightenment. I've always wanted to know. And now I'm realizing that many things, like knowing God, is something you can't prove. You have choice. And that choice is what made us man, to be distinguished from machine. And so one of the things I have a deep concern about is NASA predicting that the marriage between man and machine, transhumanism, will begin literally in 2023. That is absolutely most likely going to happen. And that, when we have barcodes and we have identifications like that, that is what I would call the mark of the beast. And so here we are at the end of days, and I want to remain human, because a machine, for example, when you become more machine-like, you lose as much as you gain. And the one thing I do not want to lose is feeling pleasure when I beat someone in chess.
It's John Regan with Dr. Reginald Miller. We'll be back after the top of the hour break. This is John Regan sitting in for Vincent today. Dr. Reginald Miller's here with me, and just want to talk about an older technology so that I can relate it to what we've been talking about. It really has not been that long ago in human history that we did things the way our ancestors did. And then we've had all this technological explosion over about the last 150 years or so. And it used to be if you had a farm, when it was time to take your goods into town, you'd hitch up the wagon to your horses and, you'd take that loaded wagon into town, and you'd have a fairly limited area in which to put your produce. And then, of course, the horses only move so fast. And then all of a sudden, this technology comes along, known as the internal combustion engine. And now you can have this truck, and you can carry more weight with the truck, and it moves faster than the horse. So that technology allows you to, make more money in the same amount of time. And if you chose to keep doing things the old way, sooner or later, you find it's not profitable to keep doing things that way. And you have a choice of either upgrading to that technology or moving it into a different field. Now, what's coming isn't going to really allow us to move to a different field. And this neural lace that is going to be the interface between our brains and devices. And I think they're still determining exactly how to get that onto our brains. But yeah, it's going to be nice to be able to, remotely control devices and, get the information, from the internet into your brain directly. But let's look how this plays out in the corporate environment. Sure, you can have your notebook there. You can, bring up a spreadsheet or search for a particular item on the internet with your favorite search engine. But if you're doing that, the old-fashioned way with your fingers and your eyes, you're not going to be able to compete with people that are able to get that directly and communicate with each other without even using words. And they're, 5 items down the agenda while you're still on item 1. You just would not be able to keep your job that way. And what's even scarier about that technology is you think you don't have privacy now. Wait until they have direct access to all your thoughts.
That's the importance of meditation and training the mind. It isn't having access to your thoughts. It's access to your behavior and your physical actions. I remember when I was told to never say something I was thinking because it would reprogram myself. In other words, if you said, for example, I can't do this, you're listening to yourself and starting to reaffirm that you can't do it by listening to it, which means that if you said it, then it became more true than if you thought it, because you were reprogramming yourself to believe it even more. That's what the upper brain is about, to make everything that you believe true. Now, if you understood that literally, that's the reason that many saints through history have stressed the importance of going quiet, going silent inside, and training the mind not to be unruly. Now, that's the upper brain. The lower brain, the stomach, the gut, the enteric nervous system, whatever, that part is an instinct that is closer to purpose and why we love such things as animals like dogs. They're closer to spirit than we are. And we need to remember that as we get back to our spirit, Crowley said it perfectly when he said, if you're doing your true will, if you're here literally doing your purpose, none shall say nay. Now, intent is actually what happens. That's what you want to have happen. And we fight ourselves and are at war with ourselves and are self-defeating because we're damaged. Something happened in childhood, the way we were birthed, Dad was this way, Mom was that way, this happened to me when I was 6, that kind of thing. I understand this on a literal level now because, for example, I did not know that I had a broken neck when I was 5 years old. Nobody knew it. It's not in my medical records. When I went through the military, they never discovered it. And yet, it all occurred when I started to wonder why everything that I was doing, everything seemed to damage on my left side. My knee, my hip, my arm, and then the trigeminal nerve. And what happened was I went to a chiropractor who took x-rays and took a closer look at my spine. And there it was. I was off structurally by 5 degrees because of scar tissue that had happened before my real memory of it. I had blacked it out. Apparently, it happened in childhood when my birth father, not the one that raised me, but my actual birth father, threw me against a wall when I tried to defend my mother against him beating her. And apparently, I nearly died. I didn't know that. And the scar tissue developed around that, but I always favored my left side by having a slight imbalance in my structural thing. And now I'm beginning to notice how that is. And so every time I sit in a chair, I mindfully have to, over my natural, habit. A habit is something we develop over years. We fall into ways. We go to the bathroom, we brush our teeth, we do our going to beds, how we fall asleep. Those all can be changed. It takes 3 months of active participation before you can actually make a habit, change a habit, or change an instinctual way you behave. That's called the parasympathetic nervous system. Andrea Puharich, who is one of my teachers, actually, he wrote a book on that called Beyond Telepathy. And that book is worthy of a read because that is where we learned how to, for example, change our response of histamine release so we no longer were bothered with allergies. Allergies, for example, are something you can change just like anything else in your body's response to it. You need to reprogram it. It always takes about 3 months to change those kinds of responses and habits, and we started doing that with biofeedback, which was one of the first things that made a SEAL, for example, different than a normal fighting machine because he had more awareness of controlling behavioral things where behavior was a tool, not a given. If you had been born in Pakistan, the chances of you being Christian are about 0. And so it's an arbitrary thing when you talk about beliefs like that, and that they are to be used as tools, just like if you put a tool aside, it doesn't mean you no longer hold that tool, but it's not appropriate for the job you're trying to do. In like manner, belief systems could be like favorite tools. I prefer a certain kind of hammer over others because I've done a lot of work with that hammer. But I don't use that hammer very much because it's not appropriate for the jobs I'm doing. And when you look at metaphor like that, you can change things and your response. Right now, we've all been reprogrammed from education and so on, to look at what the government and what's happening today in our lives as negative. And while that's maybe true in terms of your values, the basic thing is it also represents an opportunity, because change is the rule.
Yeah,
so here we are at the end of days. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah, it's going to be a different thing.
That's correct. Now you have now once you acknowledge that aspect, now you have the possibility of making that change individually for yourself. And as you do that, you will find that everyone around you is also doing that. There is a thing called awakening. And that is exactly what's happening right now. Everybody is getting exactly what I'm saying.
I'm not sure about everybody. I think a lot of them are looking at their smartphones.
Everybody that's human. How's that one sound? Yeah, because that is human purpose. And the difference between purpose and intent is so very minorly different. And yet, once you do the one over the other, you have no inertia. You have no resistance. It is the universe wants it to happen. And it's subtle between fighting for something and allowing it to happen.
It's John Regan with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. We'll be back in a few minutes.
This is John Regan with Doc Ram. You know, it was late October 2015. There was a conference near Austin. It was the Secret Space Program. And one of the speakers was Dr. John Brandenburg, who is a scientist that works for NASA. And he talked about the evidence on Mars, the radioactive isotopes that are there, that says that there was a nuclear war in the past because these isotopes don't occur naturally anywhere in the universe. And we only found out about them ourselves once we started our nuclear program. And I think, it's not just Antarctica. We're going to find out more about, the truth of Mars as well.
Mars was a water planet. It has literally, physically, more water right now than Earth does, and it's a smaller planet. There's your Atlantis, maybe, or Mu. And what was the asteroid belt? We've been here before. We've had space travel before. And now we are coming to the end of a cycle with epochs. And it's a metaphor. Nibiru is the binary, like our brain and our galaxy. Is always got a white and black hole. There's two sides. Our brain, same thing, is a cavitation. And in a metaphorically sense, with the flat earthers and the rest of this nonsense going on, you see it. We are now understanding that we don't know anything, and that the Nibiru, when Stanford announced, there it is, and it's got an unusual IR signature for being a brown dwarf. It was proposed that it had a Dyson sphere around it. Now, I'm going to say something. Nibiru, coming through every so many thousands of years, is a cycle that may be something we yet do not understand, with our future merging with our present. And that part is something I've been writing about in the article, chapter 7 of the Non-Local Mind. I wanted to say to you that as a metaphor, everything should be seen in metaphor, and I don't have a clue at this point what the multiverse might imply. But I know that I go somewhere else that is not here when I dream, and that might be why the Hopi and other older races that have memory of pre-apocalypse from the past that talk about dream time and the fact that dreams are more real than conscious waking state. And if that is even remotely true, then what we are doing right now is a dream, and like lucid dreaming, have some volition in being able to take charge and rise above the dream in terms of using it as a tool rather than allowing it to just happen. Man has no idea yet what consciousness implies. And we do know that at the moment of death, there is a physical weight loss. The ba and the ka, as the Egyptian culture used to talk about it, the soul and spirit within man, the stag and the unicorn in the forest go. Now, I believe that Sir Roger Penrose, who was my mentor in physics at Princeton, suggests the concept that the soul is structured water. It's incredible in the amount of information that database could hold in so-called exclusion zone water, H3O2. When it touches anything, it changes. And that is included in a microtubule that may be what is the soul part of yourself that leaves the body at the moment of death. Near-death experiences, astral projection, dream states, all of this is unknown why we do these things. And I'm not sure but what this moment in consciousness is a sidebar.
Hold that thought. This is John Regan with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Before we run out of time, Rick, why don't you tell us about what you have coming up?
Oh, you mean workshops and so on? Yeah, okay, good. Thank you, Ron. Was typing, trying to get, I'm overwhelmed. I am going to be in Chicago, and I would hope any of you near, even, please, come visit me so I have darshan, eyeball to eyeball. I am starting to meet fans of mine in person, and you have no idea the gift that gives to me to actually be able to physically spend time with you, and literally, not on the air, not you listening to me, not you calling me on the phone or email, the idea of actually seeing you, that is where the soul and there's a touching that occurs. I'm going to be in Chicago the 8th and 9th of March. No, I'm getting so far ahead of myself that I'm losing myself. I'm going to be in Chicago the 17th. I come in late. Matt Stein is going to be with me. And the 18th and 19th will be down on the fairgrounds in Chicago. I'll have a posting on docram.com with all the information. It will be the 18th and 19th. This is a large prepper show put on by Randy Curley that normally did gun shows and is now finding people like you want more information about prepper. And so this will be a large prepper show like Vincent put together. There'll be the usual 3D printers making weapons there and so on. But I will be speaking, Matt will be speaking on how to prepare for what is about to happen. And that will be Randy Curley in Chicago on the 18th and 19th. Now, the next thing that I'm doing, which is very exciting for me, I'm going to be on April 8th and 9th, that's where it is, up in Salem, Oregon. I have been invited to be the keynote speaker at a major comic convention for young kids. And this is the big one each year. It's its fourth year. They have about 5,000 people there. And I'm going to come in. They're billing me as the real Dr. Strange. I don't know, man. I want to do something like Galaxy Quest, where I crash the convention in a spacecraft and have aliens chasing me right up on stage. I don't know. He said he didn't have. That guy that's putting that on was in my home yesterday from California. He came all the way up to Salem to start setting things up, and then he spent time with him and his 5-year-old daughter and wife. It was wonderful. And that's called the Cherry Hill Comic Convention. And it's a big one. It's its 4th year, and there'll be a lot of trading. And I'm going to bring my Doctor Strange costume that I have and try to make an entrance, because I'd like to change and talk to children or younger kids about the importance of how comics affected my life. They're affecting yours now with the movies they're making from it. And Doctor Strange, the movie, actually is number 6 in a list of all-time science fiction movies that actually are scientifically correct. He's number 6, even there. Number 1, of course, would be 2001 Space Odyssey. There's a list of them, like Continuum, and that is going to be a fun thing, because this is where I have been writing in my Non-Local Mind. All of my articles on the Non-Local Mind have been going to The Sovereign, which is a skateboard magazine up in New York City for a younger generation. And I've got a whole passel of young kids coming up now, smart, that you and I would not want to be with the way they're doing education. And what I'm trying to do is open up new doors for them using the medium of comic books. I love it. That's what affected me. When I was a little kid, I read comics, and I collected them, and now I have a comic collection that's worthy of everything. And what I wanted to do was share that and help steer a change, like I am in sciences, agriculture, and other fields that I'm in, make some influence differences. And I'm going to do it through the world of comic books. And so the Prepper Show is this coming up on the 18th and 19th, and then I have this thing in April. They're both posted. Other things I do are posted on my website on Facebook at docram.com. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I am in a major war right now with Amazon, and now Lightning Source, a division of Ingram. And I have found them complicit, and I am now starting to have physical evidence enough that I can sue Amazon. And Lightning Source, I think, is where the real problem is, but I can't prove it. And this is a war that I did not want or choose, and they have basically taken my livelihood away from me because of it. And I am a struggling, starving artist, and I wanted to personally thank people, individuals, and you know who I am, you know who you are, because you've been helping me, and it has made a difference in me being able to stay here rather than having to go get a job at Weimart. I am still writing. Today I'm going to finish the 10th article on the multiverse, which is chapter 7, and then in the Non-Local Mind, and then I finish and start chapter 8, which will complete the Non-Local Mind. And that is going to be Rock the Casimir, or Adventures in Time Travel, and I am going to start with the purpose and meaning of different kinds of dreams and why we dream. And then I'm going to move to Ghost Dance and the Whirling Dervish, and how dance and jazz movement change space-time. As an older technology we've lost, and I'm going to talk about the Casimir effect and how it is, in fact, a time machine.
I'm not sure a financial state.
Ron. That's why you, John, because you left, and I know you got the edge of it. That's why I'm writing, because like everything I do, sometimes one needs to review it several times to get everything that I'm trying to say. I am blessed and cursed, and this is what I would hope to leave as a footprint for the next person to take my work up and expand it. I have actually watched how Tai Chi, used as a martial art technique, can change space-time. And that's one of the things that made super soldiers. Just the control of breath. If you can learn how to control your mind with meditation, you have no idea. That is our next evolution in man. How to change this movie.
I can just imagine if we did the Financial State of the Union as a comic book, it'd still be too scary for kids.
Yeah, it's interesting. They actually will take and vet a given specific comic, and then it goes into a sealed chest, and then it's got a barcode on it, so you know exactly what it's worth. It's like gold and silver. It has a value beyond. It's where an artist and a writer put writing into a whole nother level of communication. And that's what made comics a visual. So you had the artist's conceptual of what he's battling as Dormammu or something, a big squid-like item that came out of H.P. Lovecraft. It's interesting to understand what a comic is and what it is not. I never collected, I had Spider-Man. I gave them to my daughter at an early age, and she trashed them because she wasn't like I was in, preserving everything. I remember I had Fort Apache as a set that I used to play before Legos and Lincoln Logs. And I used to play with those things, and every time I put them away, I put them back in the little sacks that they came in the box that I had, and I was able to give that to my daughter as a treasure of my childhood. It's the comics are something I've carried for a long, long time, and I have Deathlock, and I have Warlock, and I have Son of Satan. I have them all. They're excellent and well written. They're just incredible, giving me concepts that I'm now physically trying to write about in sciences. Interesting. Imagination is reality.
I'd like to imagine that Fukushima didn't happen.
That's a terrible, terrible situation, and basically might have been done with intent by an invasion by a different life form now terraforming Earth. There is life forms that thrive in that universe. Black slime mold, it comes to mind, and they're talking about it as the primordial something or other. And I have to tell you, it's at Chernobyl and Fukushima, it's thriving. I'm watching chemtrails, and I don't understand why they're doing it. I have a friend who works for Putin, and he's in Latvia right now, and I'm looking at, he said that country has no money. It's a very small country, and what is who's funding that over Latvia? Why? There's a lot of questions I can't answer. Some are talking about global warming. That's horse manure. And so what do you think's going on? I don't know. What do you speculate? That's creepy, because my imagination can go to universes that I don't want to think about. And the bottom line is we're creating our own apocalypse and aliens by our very thoughts, because imagination is reality.
It's John Regan with Richard Allen Miller. We'll be back in a few minutes. This is John Regan with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. The last time we were on together, we talked about how the radiation detected at Reactor 2 was 530 sieverts an hour. And just for comparison, Chernobyl only reached a high of 300 sieverts an hour. And buried in all the articles that came out, they detected a new high of 650 sieverts. And they were saying that because that was measured at a distance, that the real reading could be in the 5,000 to 6,000 sievert range. It's just insane over there.
It's the end of days in that sense. Earth will now have forbidden regions where man is not allowed. We have somehow, with our own technologies, limited our access to the mother.
And then on this side of the big pond, and this came out on ENA News yesterday, and the title's Mysterious Cancer Killing Sea Lions Along U.S. West Coast, Bones Turning to Mush. Inside, there's just masses of yellow cancerous tissue, animals dying at alarming rates.
You know, some of that may be Hanford. The Columbia River has already been documented as toxic with radiation leakage from Hanford. It is turn the switch off.
And still they want to build more plants.
Nice to talk with you, John.
I have enjoyed it. Thank you for being on with us. I don't know if we get a chance to talk with you again until after my conference. And I hope you enjoy your outings as well.
Come to the comic convention. It'd be fun to watch me play Doctor Strange. I am going to make an entrance. Kids love that.
Oh, and I had another one here. Fukushima radiation now reported in West Coast tuna. So if you're still eating fish out of the Pacific, you might want to give that a second thought. And let's see. So many things. I'm looking at some of the items I'm getting on my plate for Monday. You just wonder what they're going to think of next. Some of these items, including China's got lasers now that can slice through light armor. Russia's got all kinds of new weaponry, and it's just not lining up for pretty times ahead.
I should finally remind you that it was Edgar Casey that said it will be the bear that saves America. Thank God, even though he's a criminal, Putin didn't go for Obama's exit in terms of starting a war.
And it got pretty close there.
I know, and he did it with intent, trying to mess Trump up. At least we may now have, even though I don't agree with half of what Trump does, he's an outsider, and that alone is going to play quite differently for us. I'm hoping for the best.
Well, we definitely, I think we can agree we got a better option than Hillary.
Yes, she was, yes. They're all criminals. They're all criminals.
Well, Rick, I've enjoyed it, and we'll see you sometime in the future there.
Cool. Nice talking to you, John. Bye-bye.
Bye. Remember, class, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.